Um, Thank you. And I'm very happy to be joined today by Karl O'Brien, who is the founder and leads a web and digital agency here in Dublin called Effector. Karl, you're kind of a young guy, aren't you? What age are you?
I am the 25.
25. And I believe that you went to DCU, correct? And you actually started in this zone, this enterprise zone, while you're still in college.
I did indeed, and again, thanks very much for having me today. It was quite a unique one. Ultimately, I always was very, I suppose, entrepreneurial tendencies. In college, I was, attending day to day, but really, it was the evenings and weekends where I ultimately had a sense of, digital marketing as an opportunity for myself to be able to provide value to businesses. So early on, it was a case of working on freelance projects to help people build e-commerce sites, digital marketing campaigns, and knew that ultimately before I even finished college, I'd established the team, and meant that when I did finish, I was able to hit the ground running then. And so we're established now coming up on 6 years, and have a team of 13 based in the city centre, but obviously as most have been remote over the last 12 months.
So are you a web development agency or a digital marketing company or a combination of both?
Sure, would definitely be a combination. Our overall goal is very focused on helping businesses drive results online, especially businesses who might have some sort of online experience, but not necessarily developed a formulated strategy and taken advantage of it to the same extent as others might have. Web design and development and digital marketing tend to be the key components of that, specifically social media marketing and advertising. That's a big
Okay,
part of
let's go back a year ago, Karl, because March 2020, when the government locked down businesses, and there was a mad
Sure.
scramble by all sorts of firms, everyone who was connecting with consumers and even business to business, to get an online presence if they didn't have one, or else to improve what they had.
Sure.
So were you knocked over in the rush from people inquiring to do something at that stage?
Sure, definitely. Very early on, I'm sure everyone remembers that week of St. Patrick's Day. It was a quite an unusual one, and very, very quickly, we ultimately found ourselves in a position that people were very much in need of the services that we require. We were definitely very fortunate in that sense, and naturally, as always, there was some turbulence early on, as some of naturally hospitality and live events and some of those kind of projects, naturally were put on hold. But we did have a clear opportunity to help in a lot of cases. So whether it was through the trading online voucher scheme that the local enterprises were offering, but even businesses directly who are over maybe the thresholds in that sense, whether it's e-commerce website development, digital marketing campaigns, their storefront became digital overnight. And ultimately the same level of investment and in experience they would develop in store, if it was a retail store, for example, or through, their in-person trainings or whatever the nature of the business was, that focus and investment was needed to be put online in that sense. So
Well, let's talk for a second then about the trading online voucher cohort, because I can remember tuning into some of the local enterprise office briefings which people had to attend before they applied for the voucher. So you literally had hundreds of people at every session, like last May and
sure.
June, and a lot of them would have got online using the voucher, which was €2,500, I think. Um, okay, you've got your online presence a year ago, and you've been trading ever since, bits and pieces. But I mean, people don't come to you unless they know about you. And I'm just wondering, what proportion of that cohort understand the need to invest in marketing as well to attract people, or do too many of them just still rely on their blogs and they're pushing out messages on Instagram or on Twitter or whatever to try and garner attention?
Sure, definitely, and naturally, it's chronologically, it makes sense that building an online store, building an online presence, that again is not only there to have, but a strong representation of the brand or business, was an immediate need this time last year. So it was naturally the first place to go, and ultimately, a lot of our work over the last 6 months in particular has been helping people ultimately who might have started, in the context of building a store or building a site, and now it's a case of creating a compelling digital marketing strategy. And it's not only ourselves, a lot of, naturally across the board, it's a big focus of a lot of different brands and businesses. There was definitely a good sense of unity early on, whereby People were being encouraged to shop local, and maybe might have been driving a lot of traffic to the website, driving some in-person customer, their traditional customer base or client base online, which was great to build some initial momentum. Now, since then, it's a case of understanding that a lot of people might not have had the cohesive plan to really drive results consistently. So that's been a focus ever since, to not only have a site, but then maximize the value of that site in driving business results on an ongoing basis.
Okay, and most people who have a website, unfortunately for us who are publishers of magazines, are inclined to direct their marketing spend towards digital advertising. And of course, the thing about Facebook and Google and Instagram and Twitter as well is that they're very good at self-service. So if you want to go off and do something yourself, they have all the tools there for you to do it. And most people, I imagine, especially most micro firms, are inclined to do that themselves instead of turning to the experts like you, because let's face it, on top of the advertising spend, you've also got the consultancy spend to your web or digital agency. What in your view do you think that the DIY approach misses out on in terms of, I know you're going to be giving yourself a plug here, in terms of the extra insights or effectiveness that you can bring to, say, something like Facebook advertising?
Sure. To be honest, a lot of the times we would often recommend that do-it-yourself approach is actually worthwhile early on, especially for micro enterprises who might be starting off, or even people who are established businesses who are really giving an increased push or focus online for the first time. There's definitely a lot of value in having that underlying understanding. And our agencies and external partners like ourselves, but even the industry broadly, can be really beneficial to then ultimately take those initial learnings and both fill a number of different shortcomings that people might often find, one of which maybe being their time. Naturally, as businesses reopen, it's a case of making sure that a digital strategy is sustainable moving forward. And then it might be the skill set. Naturally, as you said, the likes of a Facebook, Instagram, or Google Ads platform do make it very easy to click that boost button or promote button. But a lot of the time, if it doesn't actually sit alongside a cohesive strategy, then it might drive reach, interest, and engagement, but might not actually drive business results.
Where do you think this cohesive strategy starts with in the marketing? Is it in the amount of hits to your site? Is it the amount of qualified leads? When you go into a client, where do you start with on this strategy discussion?
Sure. A big thing I would often recommend to businesses is not to get held up on otherwise superficial metrics, I should say. So ultimately, starting with those core business goals, what are you trying to achieve, and making sure that any strategy is mapped to that specifically. So for argument's sake, let's say you're looking to drive online sales, and we can say to achieve 100, for every 100 online sales, we can figure out what that specifically means across each stage of the user's journey. So those 100 sales, for example, maybe that might require 150 people to add a product to their cart. It might require 500 website visitors. And working back further, it might require 1,500 likes or engagement or visibility across Google or different social media networks. So defining those goals, working backwards, tends to be a great first focus. Another piece that I'd often recommend is people to look at not only those potential new customers who aren't aware of your brand or business, but ultimately, what's that large cohort of people who already have maybe demonstrated interest in the brand or business in some way. So naturally, with any e-commerce store, you're going to get, on average, between 95 and 98% of people will actually leave the site without converting. And in average cases, that would be considered a good conversion rate, between 1 to 5%, or at least an average for most industries. That's a large cohort of people who, again, have visited the website and signaled their interest in some way. They've visited a product page. They're still in that decision-making process. So what we'd often recommend is not only focus on pushing out a lot, too many messages in some cases, and overwhelming people with social media content that's constantly asking or promoting or looking for something in return before providing any value. Focusing on that large cohort of people through the likes of well-timed social media advertising, might be email marketing, to make sure that you can nudge people over that finish line of making a purchase online, and not just, again, focusing on the people who haven't taken that initial leap in the first place.
Okay, I was looking at one of your blogs here, Karl, and you're talking about social media ads, and your starting point is content engagement. So that's presumably, what does content engagement mean? That you have a decent ad, that it's visually good, video. What elements go into good, decent content engagement?
Sure. So that initial attract phase is a very important part. There's got to be a couple of sources where people will naturally get that first impression of your brand. Most of the time it's through a Google search listing page. It might be a Google ad, or a piece of social media content. So content engagement is very important in that sense, and not for its own sake, but because it will then lead into those business results. So one thing we would often focus on is, again, providing value before asking for something in return. Consistent messages, people are overwhelmed with a large volume of social media content, and if you can provide that value in the form
When you mean value, you mean discounts or what?
So it could be different for every type of business. If you're a service provider or a specialist in a particular sector, or even provide products and services in a particular sector, it might be positioning yourself as a thought leader in that space and providing advice, insights, or information that, without, again, asking for that sale, you're providing value and giving straight away you're giving some sort of value to a potential customer. Again, it could be in the context of some businesses, some sort of a discount or incentive. It can depend on what your goals are and the audience, but it's a case of figuring out what value means to them in each case.
So this value proposition has attracted someone to your site, whether it's a product site or a service site, but perhaps they haven't made the purchase. At least with Facebook, you kind of, I don't know, on other platforms, then you have this your back-end targeted advertising. What does that mean?
Sure. So ultimately, through a lot of different social media content, you'll see sponsored posts throughout that feed. And ultimately, well-timed social media advertising can be very effective, especially in taking people who might have demonstrated some initial interest by liking or engaging with a social media post, and targeting, focusing on an ad to actually drive them towards a particular action. So for example, you could run an ad that focuses on people who've engaged with your social media content over the last number of weeks, and promote a particular product that's a focus of a particular campaign.
And how granular is the information, is the targeting that you can achieve with Facebook in terms of audience demographics, etc., location, age, type of person, you know what I mean?
Exactly. So that's a very common, those are some of the very, maybe common demographics around, again, age, gender, location, interests, and behavior through the likes of Facebook or Instagram, maybe. And now what we'd often suggest is the more specific you can define your audience and define your goals, the better those potential results can be. So if you're focusing on an ad on mothers between 30 and 40 in North Dublin, and naturally they might have engaged with a number of other specific brands, that's going to mean you can serve an ad to an audience that is very primed to engage if you can provide value to them up front.
And is this all DIYable, so to speak? What we're talking about here. I suppose it is. I mean, if someone wants to dig down and dig into the Facebook audience metrics, they can achieve that themselves.
Definitely. And ultimately having that really specific understanding, naturally a lot of people would have created maybe customer personas at some stage in the life cycle of their business. And it's a case of applying those same statistics and maybe insights around your audience to an online platform like Facebook advertising. And we would always suggest, as a starting point, whether it's yourself or a member of your team, working to ultimately develop some initial understanding internally, develop some initial, I suppose, results, and then using, only then looking for a third party to really amplify and hone in that message. It's always worth looking back again across each activity, each touch point a user might see, whether it be social advertising, email, blog posts, social media content, to use two components as a springboard for every decision. Does it align with my objectives, and does it align with my audience? And as long as you can answer those questions, it's a very good indication as to what will and won't work in the case of any digital marketing.
What about remarketing, Karl? So serving up ads to people who visit your website or who have signed up to your email or watch your video content. Is that something that can just be achieved through Facebook, or if one has a normal run-of-the-mill website, can you also deploy this remarketing and targeting of ads?
Definitely. So ultimately, thinking about those couple of phases in the digital marketing process, we start with the attract phase where we've used content to engage them initially, and we've the actual engage stage then where we're driving them towards our website in the form of advertising. And the next conversion stage, convert stage, can be very effective, and remarketing would be a big part of that. And ultimately, again, like any other type of advertising, if you have a very strong idea of who that audience is and how they're interacting with your website, remarketing can be very effective. So for example, if somebody visits a product page, especially if your product or service is a higher priced, not an impulse purchase, a remarketing ad to drive people back who've already demonstrated interest, they'll be jump back on the page, again using some engaging video content.
What form does that remarketing ad take? Is it an MPU, or is it a, what is it like? How does it appear to the person who's visited the website? How does it follow them around?
Sure. So there's a number of different types of formats. One might be, for example, a video they see within their Instagram feed. One might be a display ad they see as they're navigating across the web. It might be a static graphic of focusing on a particular product, or a carousel, or kind of a gallery of products that you might often have seen on Facebook or Instagram. Ultimately, every audience is different. So it's a case of, again, figuring out what's going to be most, I suppose, in sync with your audience and your offering in that case.
Yeah, well, I think most people who are, surfing the web are very used to ads following them around. But what you seem to be saying is that it's not just for the big boys, that the small firms can play that game too.
Exactly. And ultimately, having a clear focus around, for example, really investing in that high quality content, whether it be photography and videography in the case of physical goods and products, whether it's, again, video content in relation to services you might provide as well. And that's going to be the first impression, and working with a designer who can ultimately take that into a really compelling graphic or visual that is going to justify somebody stopping on a social media feed. If that initial design or aesthetic doesn't capture their attention, they might have scrolled by already. So that first impression, just like anything else, is going to be very important. And I suppose an ad could be a digital equivalent to that.
You highlight video here as being very key to successful social advertising strategy. In your own case, so what's your recommended program or way of doing it quick? Can you just do it with your phone and edit it afterwards? How do you guys do it?
Exactly, yes. So, naturally, a lot of people would find that as an initial burden to get started, and quality being too much of a burden. Naturally, any iPhone camera or any smartphone camera is going to give you a great starting point. And depending on the service, that more natural look and feel can often be a lot more compelling. One thing that we'd often recommend is asking a customer to record a quick testimonial. A very personal, natural testimonial about your product and service can be a great piece of content that can be used as an ad. And by nature of it being, not too polished or professional, will actually make it a lot more effective in that case. It's going to give you that additional social proof, whereby they're not taking your word for it, and it'll really work well with the types of content they might be used to seeing on their social media feeds already.
Okay. I want to dig into a little bit with one case study that Effector was involved in over the past year, Karl, and that's a department store in Ballinasloe called Keller's, which has been around for yonks since 1958, in fact. So, as I understand it, when lockdown occurred, Keller's weren't online at all, were they not?
They weren't, no. And
Okay.
ultimately, a big, it was from working with the team there over 3 generations. The business had focused in store, but ultimately not made that leap online.
Okay, and so what you've got done, I was just looking at the site today. So I was looking at the site. So there's it must be, it's kind of, I haven't been in the store, but there's 46 different product categories now online for them, and there's actually 620 different products. Obviously covers practically everything in the store. Like there's 40 choices of blankets and throws, there's 16 different types of pillows, there's 22 chests of drawers. Now what I'm thinking when I'm looking at that site, if I'm living around Ballinasloe and I was housebound, I couldn't move because of restrictions, great, I know all about Keller's, I'll go online and I can order it and they'll deliver to me, fantastic. But what's the next stage now for Keller's? Because the store is back open, people will get used to going back into the store. Can a small firm like that actually bring its bedside tables to the attention of somebody in Donegal or in Wexford, if it's at a good enough price that people should buy it? But I mean, it's not going to take massive marketing investment to do that.
Sure. Now, it's an interesting case study, and again, a great project to work on. And ultimately, for better or for worse, a lot of the behaviors that we've naturally been forced into over the course of the last 12 months, naturally will, in the short term, revert to some sort of normality. But a lot of those will stick around as people are used to even greater extent than before, operating and buying online in that same way. And ultimately, any e-commerce business, Keller has been a great example of that, need to have a defined strategy moving forward. And there's a couple of ways that can be very effective in doing that without necessarily trying to do everything overnight. So number one is going to be search engine optimization. By nature of having such a large product range, there's a lot of particular keywords that if people are searching for not only, for example, a chest of drawers, a particular brand and particular model or type, making sure that where the site is optimized to appear for those key search results is going to be a big part of that. Google Ads, whereby people again are searching, not only searching, but we're able to skip the queue on those search results. Email marketing is also a big piece that, while naturally social media is definitely a newer focus for a lot of people, having building an email list is an invaluable tool for ultimately developing a much more personal relationship with your customer base.
So you think for the example of Keller's, if they kind of have 1,000 customer names, for example, that they've garnered over the last year, yet what's to stop them, or they should be doing, is kind of at least once a month maybe sending out an offer, okay, visit the site and get this and that now. And so it's complementary to the store rather than taking away business from it.
Exactly. And to be honest, over the course of the last year, a lot of people have seen online as a replacement for their core business, but now are coming out of this with another division or another component of their business and another source of revenue. In that case, even in the context of email marketing, there's a lot of opportunities there, not only building on top of maybe a monthly email marketing campaign, but one opportunity that is really effective is email automation, whereby it doesn't require a lot of additional time. It does require more setup, but you can trigger different emails based on people's past purchasing. So for example, if somebody purchases something in a wardrobes category or in a bedding category at key times over the course of a number of months, you might want to give some other product recommendations. If your product has a certain life cycle of maybe 6 to 12 months, maybe replacing products is a big opportunity. So knowing again what type of products and categories that somebody's been interested in can be great to define a strategy.
Just on a practical point there, Karl, what email program do you use for that kind of activity?
Sure. So there's a couple of different tools. MailChimp would be the most common. There's another tool called Klaviyo that we'd often use in the context of e-commerce businesses specifically. Now, ultimately, again, I wouldn't focus as much on the tool itself as a lot of the core tools will do the job. It's a case of developing that initial strategy and implementing something and ultimately refining from there.
Well, I think does MailChimp support automated emails like you're talking about there? Yeah.
It does, yeah. So again, a lot of people would know MailChimp as that simpler newsletter platform, but they've really invested in the last number of years to integrate well with your website, whether your e-commerce site, whether it's Shopify, whether it's WordPress and WooCommerce, whatever tool you're using, you can integrate that with the likes of a MailChimp, ActiveCampaign, Klaviyo, and ultimately mean that, again, those well-timed emails can be triggered to elicit action from a past purchaser at key times.
One thing I'd like to also discuss too, I mean, a lot of your clients were obviously trading online voucher clients. You're saying, kind of micro firms, if you like, but then there is this other COVID-19 online retail scheme, which is kind of an Enterprise Ireland funded scheme that is going to be, it's for established retailers who have a shop and who want to move online. And so far in 2 rounds, it's given out grants from 10,000 to 40,000 euro to 330 businesses, and there's going to be another announcement upcoming shortly. Exactly. Well, what I'm thinking is that if you're in that kind of bricks and mortar online space like Keller's, and you want to go online, well, firstly, you should really be thinking about trying to source some of this grant aid. But if the government's giving out up to 40,000 in a grant, and the company's having to spend 50,000. To get that 40K, 40 out of the 50. It does not say really that, if you're not prepared to spend decent money on your online adventure, then you're like, there's no point.
Sure. And I think it's ultimately something maybe people would have thought of that digital presence as a secondary component, but at the same time, it's the equivalent of opening a new physical premises, and there's naturally investment and capital needed to really drive a positive return on investment there. You know, naturally in a typical year, and even now after for 2021, that size, over 10 staff, over $1 million in revenue would tend to be the most common businesses we would work with. Those established businesses who might have built some initial experience online and again are looking to really drive it forward now. So just like the trading online voucher scheme for people who fall under that 10 staff threshold, the online retail scheme from Enterprise Ireland could be a great tool for people who are again moving to that next level. And if it's something by nature of the external circumstances you're looking to invest in anyway, by all means, it's a great scheme to take advantage of.
And what proportion of these kind of bricks and mortar clients, you obviously are familiar with Ketters, and there was another job you did there for, I see Rococo out in Sandico, a fashion store. So as you say, like the new site that they have is complementary to their store when it's open again. Is that the only way it can work, as a complement, or how difficult is it to say, look, you know what, I'm going to forget about this bricks and mortar thing and just go online, hell for leather, What kind of a leap is that to make?
Sure, and to be honest, it's definitely a leap that people are making. We've seen clients do the same thing where their business ultimately transitioned online, but they're now seeing the benefits of scale, of ease of use, and ultimately the revenue opportunity that can come with even keeping online as a focus, even if it's a case where the physical store isn't completely left to the side, or again, if it's a service-based businesses offering that opportunity, those services online primarily. At the end of the day, you ultimately could be guided by the data, be guided by the opportunities there. What we've found is over the last, again, a number of months, people have seen the potential there in a way that they might not have seen before, and not maybe had their eyes as open to it. So by all means, it's definitely something that we're seeing, and I think we would expect to continue, especially over the next year or two, as people return again to that maybe flexible approach between online and offline, and then can really see how behaviors have changed and what's the best focus to really drive their business forward into the future.
Just one final point, Karl, the trading online voucher with thousands of them given out last year, is it still available, or what's the story?
Exactly, it's still available. The terms are slightly changed, but ultimately the grant of 2,500 is still available, up to 50% of matched. So if you spend 2,500, you'll get 2,500 in co-funding from local enterprise offices.
And are you still finding people coming to you looking to progress online?
Definitely, it's a really great scheme, and ultimately it's been around for a number of years, but they've really honed it in the last 12 months. So it's a great opportunity for, again, people to take advantage of if you're under that 10 staff threshold. And by all means, to some of the Enterprise Ireland schemes, if over that 10 staff can be another opportunity. Either way, there's definitely a lot of support here to take advantage of. If for most people, it's an area to move into anyway.
Okay. Karl, just finally, what do you do in your lunch break? Are you back in the office?
Back in the office, yeah, more so than where it's good, maybe an opportunity to get out of the house a bit more, breaking up the week. I'm probably more focused on, I'm guilty of being two heads down during lunch, but I know it was great to take a step back today and chat in this case.
Well, listen, thanks for sharing your wisdom. That's Karl OBrien of Effector.ie, Karl, I presume, is it?
Exactly, Effector.ie, and yeah, by all means, if anyone has any questions.
Okay, best of luck. It's fantastic for such a young guy to be. Geez, most people don't get going into the business until they're 30. They don't know what you'd be like when you're by the time you reach 40, you'll be running the world. So listen, that's it for today on Lunch Break with Business Plus. Thanks to Karl, and thanks as always to our sponsor Mazda, and we'll be back again soon. Cheers.